Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the To Kill a Mockingbird podcast. Today, I will be talking about and going over chapters 11 through 21 of the novel. This is the episode where things really start to pick up and become a lot more interesting. We get to meet a lot of new characters, see a lot of new people, and these are some of my favorite chapters in the whole book. Without any further introduction, though, let's hop into Episode 2, The Trial of Tom Robinson. Chapter 11. To get to the town, Jem and Scout would have to pass Mrs. Henry Lafayette Dubos's house. She would always harass Jem and Scout whenever they would pass. She would always criticize Atticus for supporting Tom Robinson, the person which he is defending in his most recent upcoming case. Jem, however, does not take this very well. He grabs a baton he bought Scout with some extra money he got, and he destroys all her camellia bushes in front of her house. That evening, when Jem tells Atticus, because he feels guilty, he sends Jem straight to Mrs. Dubose to apologize, and he promises to tend to her bushes every Saturday. But instead, Mrs. Dubose asks him to come each day to read to her. For the next month, Scout accompanies Jem to Mrs. Dubose's house, even though she still made bad remarks about Atticus. Jem would always read to her until she fell asleep, and after the month ended, she passed away. Confused, Atticus revealed that she had been battling her addiction to morphine and that her mood was a side effect of the withdrawal. She was doing this because she did not want to die addicted to something, which is a move that I thoroughly respect. And Atticus wanted to show his kids this and teach them a lesson. This is personally one of my favorite chapters in the entire book, as it shows off how good of a father Atticus is. He doesn't get terribly upset with Jem, but he makes Jem apologize and to go along with her request. This just kind of shows that Atticus is very laid back, but he's also very stern. If you make a mistake, he's going to make sure you make up for it, make sure you make things right, which, again, is Harper Lee's writing style coming into play of making characters really seem to come to life, which I really like and appreciate. Chapter 12. Summer returns and Jem will be turning 12 soon. His adolescence traits are starting to show, depicted by him telling Scout to stop bothering him and to start acting like a lady instead of a girl, as he used to say. Dill writes saying he can't come this summer, but he hopes for it to be a fun summer for Jem and Scout. He says that he is a new stepfather and they're going to build a fishing boat together. And he assures Scout that he loves her and promises to come for her when he gets money, which is just a really funny detail. Atticus is called to an emergency session of the state legislature due to him being a lawyer and that being his profession. Because it is Sunday and Atticus can't take them to church, Calpurnia takes the kids to a black church, where they are received with a mixture of kindness and prejudice. This discrimination is an eye-opening experience in a way, prompting them to discuss education, religion, and see the difference between white and blacks. When they arrive home, however, they see Aunt Alexandra at their doorstep. In this chapter, we get to experience and learn about Calpurnia and what her life is like in Maycomb. This is a very nice and laid-back chapter, as it bridges the case as well as the theme of prejudice together. This helps everything kind of later run more smoother together, which I think is cool. I really like how Calpurnia just takes the kids to church and defends the kids against the people saying they shouldn't be there. This is a big thing back then, as Calpurnia is black and the kids are white, and that racial tension back then created a whole big thing. And for Calpurnia to just break those social norms and treat everyone equally is a very big deal. And Calpurnia is also very kind and caring, which I just think is sweet. And the ending of the chapter is a perfect little cliffhanger, as it gets the reader ready for what Aunt Alexandra is about to bring to Maycomb. Chapter 13. Aunt Alexandra, Atticus's sister, takes the role of a mother figure and is there to correct the behavior of Jem and Scout to live up to the Finch family name. To please Aunt Alexandra, Atticus tells his children to behave accordingly, and behave accordingly as the good family name requires. This really confuses and upsets the kids, especially Scout, and Atticus, realizing his mistake, he tells them to forget everything he just said. Here, in this chapter, even though it's very short, we get to learn more about who the Finch family were. They were a very pristine family who owned a large plantation, and Aunt Alexandra is concerned about keeping the family name good, while Atticus is more concerned with bringing up his kids in a way the kids want, not how the family name wants them to. This, again, is where Atticus just shines as a father, and I love him. He's my favorite character. Another cool thing is how Harper Lee uses, again, more literary devices. This time, my favorite one from this chapter was an exaggeration used by Scout. And she says, "A while in Maycomb can mean anything to 3 days to 30 years," which I think is just funny. Chapter 14. Scout tells Aunt Alexandra that Calpurnia took them to her church. Atticus doesn't mind, as he's Atticus and he's very laid back, but Aunt Alexandra very much does. She demands Calpurnia to be fired, at which Atticus refuses. Trying to behave like an adult, Jem tells Scout to stop making Alexandra angry to make everything kind of easier in their home situation. Later that night, Scout steps on something that moves in her room, and she thinks it's a snake. Jem searches, and upon the search, they find that it's actually Dill under her bed. He had run away from home because of his stepfather never wanting him around. The kids decide it would be best to tell Atticus, in which Atticus tells Miss Rachel Haverford where Dill is, so she can inform Dill's parents. And as the three kids fall asleep, Scout asks Dill why Boo Radley never ran away. And Dill said maybe because he had nowhere to run to. And this makes Scout appreciate her family bond with Jem and Atticus even more. This chapter, we can already tell there's going to be a bit of tension between Atticus and Alexandra due to their very different views. I do like that Atticus is trying to appeal to both sides, as it makes them just kind of seem more real. Again, with characters kind of coming to life in a way. Here we can see Boo Radley coming into play again as the trial is about to begin, which I enjoyed because of good old Dill. And Dill's been kind of like the fun sidekick kind of character of the story. But here we get actual plot development from him as we learn about the struggles of his home life. And a slight theme of good versus evil is starting to come into play as well, as Scout does not like the company of Aunt Alexandra and wishes she would leave. Chapter 15. The next week, things seem to settle down a bit. Dill is staying for the summer, as his parents agreed to after he ran away. Jem agrees to assist them in repairing the treehouse, and Scout is on relative good terms with her aunt during this chapter. And Dill has set another plan to lure out Boo. Sheriff Tate and a group of men come one day to inform Atticus that Tom Robinson was being transferred to the county jail because it was dangerous for him to stay in the town jail a night before his trial. The reality of this case is really starting to set upon the family, and it worries Jem a lot about Atticus. The following evening, Atticus leaves for town after supper, and the three kids follow him sneakily. He camps out in front of the Maycomb jail as the kids watch from a distance. Cars arrive, and many men empty out. They're looking for Tom Robinson. Tension is created as Atticus does not allow them to pass to get to Tom. And things seem to be about to get violent when Scout runs up and identifies Walter Cunningham's father. She starts making small talk and eventually kind of diffuses the situation and makes them realize they can't do this. It makes the rioters realize they can't go for Tom. Some notes about this chapter is during the events here, things kind of calm down between Alexandra, and they seem to be going well in that regard. However, the trial is really starting to affect their family as Atticus is taking it very personally. As he goes down to the jail to protect Tom Robinson from the group of people that arrive. However, Scout intervenes and saves the situation from becoming hostile without her really even knowing. And this scene is a perfect example of the theme of small town living, as everyone knows each other, and Scout was able to identify one of the riders and make small talk, which I just thought was really funny and kind of cool at the same time. Chapter 16. The Finch home right now is very tense due to the events of the prior night with Atticus defending outside Tom's jail cell defending him. Aunt Alexandra is upset with the kids, while Atticus is glad they showed up to cover his back. As the jury selection begins for the case, Atticus asks the kids to stay away from the courthouse that day. They're very curious because people are passing the courthouse, and during the afternoon session, they stop to pick up Dill and head to the courthouse, where they find seats in the colored balcony. During this chapter, Atticus is trying to protect the kids from the trial as much as they can, because Atticus knows that this trial is going to get ugly in a way. But the kids' curiosity is what makes them go, inevitably, and they sit down. And I also think it's very nice. It's a nice little touch that the kids sit in the colored balcony when there are no other seats, and it kind of even helps promote the theme of equality even further. Chapter 17. As the trial begins, Sheriff Tate gives his testimony, stating that Bob Elwell entered his office claiming that his daughter Mayella had been raped and beaten by a black man. They went to the Elwells, and she identified her attacker as Tom Robinson. When Atticus cross-examined him, he established that they didn't call a doctor, which is a big red flag, and that the right side of Mayella's face received the most beating, meaning the assailant was left-handed. This is a big deal because Tom Robinson got into an accident that permanently damaged his left arm, making it near useless. So this is another piece of evidence that helps support Tom Robinson being innocent. When Bob Elwell steps to the stand, Scout reveals a backstory about the Elwells, that every town has a family like them, which is very poor, and they're angry about it. Bob Elwell's story matches the sheriff's, but Atticus sees loopholes in it, like the fact that a doctor was never called, and he shows the court that Bob Elwell is in fact left-handed, showing that he could have in fact beaten his daughter instead. Jem is, at this point, excited, thinking they have a very good chance, but Scout is still very skeptical and worried. And during this chapter, the trial is kind of coming in full force, and Atticus is doing an amazing job, needless to say, at defending Tom. He identifies weaknesses, and he's able to turn it around on Bob, saying that he was more likely the attacker. This is where Atticus's knowledge really shines here, and we can tell that he's giving it his all to defend Tom. And this relates to the theme of equality, is Atticus being Caucasian and Tom being African American, and Atticus giving his all. That's a very important detail, is most lawyers would not do that during this time, and they would admit defeat before they started. But it means a lot that Atticus is putting forth effort, is what I'm trying to say. That's why Atticus is my favorite character. Chapter 18. Atticus's cross-examination of Mayella clearly shows that Tom could not have done it. Mayella even stops answering Atticus's questions at the end because the evidence is in plain sight for everyone to see. But this, unfortunately, does not guarantee Tom's freedom. Atticus knows that the case at this point cannot be won, but the children show some kind of childlike hope. Based on the evidence, Tom cannot be convicted. However, in the end, there is an overall mood and feeling that Tom will be found guilty. During this chapter, it goes to show, despite the views on equality that the Finch children have, the town does not. Atticus knows that Tom is going to be found guilty, which is very unfortunate, but I think it's nice that the children still have hope, and that they see that everyone is equal and peers, which is very big for that time. It also kind of gives the reader a sense of hope for Tom as well, which I think is just great writing, and it really goes to show how much Scout is maturing as a person. She's understanding the world around her and forming her own opinions on it, and most would agree that these opinions are good. Chapter 19. Tom's testimony actually reveals him to be a very gentle and caring man who occasionally helped his neighbors, the Elwells. He states that Mayella had been inviting him over the fence to perform small tasks for her, but she always kind of made the advances on him. On the day in question, he was getting something down from a shelf, and she suddenly grabbed his legs and pulled him to the ground, and she proceeded to start to kiss him. Her father came and saw it through the window, however, and got very, very angry. And Tom says he got scared and fled at that point. And Mr. Gilmer, who is Mr. Elwell's defendant, cross-examines, doesn't change his testimony at all. He is asked very harsh questions that why he would do work without getting paid, and to that he responds he felt sorry for Mayella, a statement that deeply insults the Elwells. This becomes a little too much for Dill, and he starts crying. Jem tells Scout to take him outside to the square, where Dill says that Mr. Gilmer's cross-examination on Tom was what upset him due to how harsh it was in nature. This chapter lets the reader know that Tom could not have been the one to do it. We get a feeling for him, and we know that he's too kind and that he only wanted to help. And we even get more development from Dill as he gets upset and offended by the remarks made at Tom, as we can also infer from Dill that he is very kind and caring as well. Chapter 20. In the square, the two talk while Dill's crying, the two talk with Dolphus Raymond, who has a black girlfriend and a children of mixed race, while he is in fact white. This is something that is looked down upon by many in Macomb County. He offers Dill cola, which Scout thinks is alcohol. Surprised it is actually cola, she asks Raymond why he lets people think he's a drunkard, and he answers that people would leave him and his family alone if they think he's a drunkard instead of a normal, kind of straight-headed thinking person, I guess. The children then return to the courthouse once Dill calms down, and Scout gets Jem's attention as she points at Calpurnia, walking toward Atticus. This chapter, we get insight to another odd man around town. He tells us about what his life is like, which I found to be pretty interesting. I think it's kind of smart that he tricks the town into thinking he's a drunkard, and I also liked how the chapter ended off with a bit of a cliffhanger when Calpurnia was entering. To end off this chapter, I'm going to do it with one of the literary devices again. Scout uses a simile to describe a lie told by Mr. Elwell that everyone could really see. And she describes it as a lie as black as Tom Robinson's skin, which I thought to just be slightly amusing and very creative. So I thought I'd include it. Chapter 21. Calpurnia passes a note informing Atticus that his children are missing from the house. But the newspaper publisher Braxton Underwood tells Atticus that the children are in the colored balcony. They meet downstairs and Atticus orders them to go back home. But Jem convinces Atticus to allow them to come back for the verdict. Alexandra is shocked to learn where they have been, and she's very upset about it. And after eating, they get back, and the jury arrives with the verdict around 11 p.m. Tom Robinson is found guilty. Some final notes before I end off this episode is, while heartbreaking, this gives an amazing eye-opener into just how prejudiced people really were during these times. It gives us the idea of how much a big deal equality really is. Tom Robinson, an innocent black man, was convicted for a crime he obviously didn't commit. And this chapter kind of really gets the emotions going due to just how upsetting and sad it truly is in nature. Well, that will be it for this episode of the podcast. Sorry to end it off with a bit of a sad note, but trust me, this is just the calm before the storm. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a good rest of your day.